The last thing we're going to cover in this section is validation. So as we write code, we may run into problems. If you have a typo in our code or don't use the right syntax or grammar, our web pages may not look as expected. In these situations, we can use a validator to identify the potential errors in our code. Now, currently, we don't have any problems on this web page. It looks perfectly fine to me, but let's run it by the standard HTML validator. So we go to validator.w3.org. This is a standard markup validation service. We have 3 methods for validating our HTML markup. We can validate by an address if our website is live on our internet, but this doesn't work for us because our website is currently hosted locally in our development server. So this IP address that we have over here, 127.0.0.1, this is a local IP address. So no one else can access our website. So here we have 2 other methods. We can validate by file upload or by direct input. In this case, I'm going to go with file upload. So let's upload our index.html file and check. So look, we have 1 warning and 2 errors. The warning is saying that we haven't added the lang or language attribute to the HTML start tag. This is a common best practice because with this, we can tell search engines what is the language of this web page, so they can do a better job at displaying the results. This is very easy to fix. So here's our HTML tag. We're going to add the lang attribute and set it to EN, which is short for English. Now, what is next? We have an error saying the character encoding was not declared. Don't worry about this. We'll talk about this in the next section. So let's look at the second error. It's saying that an image element must have an alt attribute. So earlier we had this alt attribute. I told you that we use the alt attribute to provide a description for our image. So if the image cannot be displayed, the alternative text will be displayed. Again, we're going to talk about the alt attribute in more detail in the future. So back to our code. Let's fix this error real quick. Here's our image tag. Let's add the alt attribute. And for the description, I'm going to say an image of Mosh Hamedani. Now save the changes. Let's re-upload the file and validate it one more time. Okay, this time we have only a single error, and that has to do with character encoding, which we're going to talk about in the next section. So this is all about HTML validation. Now for CSS, we have a different validator. So we go to jigsaw.w3.org/CSS-validator. Now you don't have to memorize this address. Simply go to Google and search for CSS validator. Here's the first link. So we have the same interface. We can validate our CSS code using an address or by file upload or direct input. Now in this case, we have embedded all of our CSS code inside our HTML markup. But as our web pages get more complex, we want to separate our CSS code into separate files so our code is better organized. We'll talk about this in more detail in the future. So for now, I'm going to copy all of our CSS code and then go to the third tab, paste it over here, and validate it. So we don't have any errors. Everything is perfect. So this is all about validation. Validation is very important. If your web pages aren't displayed as expected, always start with a quick validation because this can often point you in the right direction. All right, that brings us to the end of this section. In the next section, we're going to explore HTML in more detail.